Tonight we have, as I mentioned, Helga Fanderl, and I only saw one program of her work, and I don't even remember where, but it was several years ago. And I thought, who is this remarkable person making this incredible body of really beautiful, ephemeral Super 8 films, and then with this really unique way of presenting them, which is very intimately and very personally, very directly, very much in person. I started to talk to other people about her and learn about her work, and was quite taken with the fact that in some ways it's quite hard to see her films, because really the best way to see her films is if you bring her, and she'll bring the films and show them to you and talk to you about them directly. And so when we got this opportunity to apply for money from the Kelly Foundation, she was really one of the first artists we thought we should bring, because wheezing dog there in the back. Because we knew if we really wanted to have a chance to see her work, we really had to bring her as well. So I've talked long enough, and so she's really much more equipped to talk about herself than I am. So please welcome again with me, Helga Fanderl.
So, good evening. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Becca. Becca cannot come because they have a ill cat, which cannot be alone. And thanks to the nice place, I think it's really very particular, and I feel comfortable with this working space to show my work, and above all with Super 8. And thank you for coming. And I would just like to give a short introduction and to speak rather after the screening. I have written something because I'm a bit nervous. For the presentation of my work in Los Angeles, I have prepared two composed programs that are related, but you can see them individually if you can make it the second time. They are dedicated to Peter Hutton, a wonderful filmmaker and person who passed away in summer. I gave a title to the two programs, Serendipities, which that refers to the way I find my subject matter. There is no written text, no script, no concept. It's with my Super 8 camera that I encounter situations and moments, patterns of movements and rhythms which inspire me to start to make a film. I react directly to a given moment and place, communing with what happens in front of the camera, and transforming my perceptions, ideas, and feelings into film. My eye at the eyepiece, camera in hand, pressing and releasing the shutter button, that is in camera editing. And this is a very concentrated method of making a film, at the same time in my imagination and in one gesture, as it were. The individual films are short and very short. You will see some of the very shorts. They are silent, but you will have the sound of the projectors set up in the audience, what I always do, above all with Super 8, but also with the 16mm prints if it's possible. Short pauses of black leader separate the single films from each other. But at the end it becomes one ephemeral film, I can say, for every screening, because I make new combinations for almost every screening. Tonight you will see 22 of my films, 13 Super 8 prints, 9 16mm blow-ups, many films at a time. They become a sort of unique film for this evening. I have to change only once a reel, but there will be no intermission. It must become one thing. And afterwards, we have to put away the projector quickly, because the 60mm projector is more behind, because the image will be bigger. So I invite you, that's maybe a little too much strong to say, but I say, I invite you to relax and to simply keep open your eyes and mind, entering a filmic cosmos of mind. Experience intense moments that I have experienced when I was filming in the real world, and that are conjured up and present anew with every screening. So, enjoy.
I think the main thing this program did for me is make me really want to see everything else. So we only have to bring you back another maybe 35 or 40 times to see all of your films.
No, I think every program is exemplary, you know? It shows a part of how I work in total. So it's
like a microcosm.
It's a microcosm, but a part of a bigger microcosm.
Yeah. So with literally about 1,000 films, it seems to me that the art in your practice is not only the films themselves, but the arrangement of them for an audience. And I could imagine a total paralysis of trying to figure out how to put together a program, but you do it all the time, so it must be very intuitive for you too.
So it has become a very important part of my whole practice of a filmmaker, but it's not easy, because the films are not meant to be together. So they come into existence when I'm attracted to film something, and at the end it's always more or less associative. It's not necessary, and it's not necessarily always the same. So I could change all the time. With Super 8, actually, I really compose with single films and change all the time. And whereas when I started to have 16mm blow-ups, because I could not get any longer Super 8 prints, I decided to create small unities, and I combine different unities. So this is more recent with respect to my whole practice, but it's always a challenge for me too. So on the other hand, on the one hand, it's interesting. But it demands a long process sometimes, yeah. And until I really say, so now for this time, accept it like that. Okay.
I feel like I kept finding so many remarkable connections between the films, such as when you early on in the aviary, where you're following the birds, and then a little bit later we see the airplanes behind the trees. But then you're also following these little girls playing this game, and then even the fish and the water lilies at the end. And I'm wondering, how conscious are these visual connections that you're making between the films, and are you also surprised yourself to find these connections when you see the program?
Yeah, as I'm surprised by my subject matter very often in the way I film them, it's true. But with the time I have, sometimes it's easier. In this program, it's really quite about colors, certain movements, and you will see if you come to the second part, there are even I dared to put in 2 times the same subject matter, but it's not the same, and so it's changed. I'm still not experimenting. It would not be the right term, but in finding out, and I can do so many combinations, either the subject matter itself, either rhythms, either colors, either motives. For example, that's the last part. It was much about, on the one hand, falling down, and for example, the combination of the apples that do not want to leave their home or their existence in the other, and then you have a tree and the girls being like butterflies, and but it's, you can see it, and I could combine in a very different way too. So it's really endless. It's I could go on forever, but I would not like to do it eternally. But it's a very intense work for myself. So since I am making the films in a situation in camera editing, and where there is no post-production for the single film, but then there is this work of putting together programs, which is really montage. At every time, that's a different, but it becomes a different film. So, and this came out of the logics of my work. It was not really a concept, you know. I started to make films, and then since I started to do them as filmed in camera edited, where I never can control everything. So I have to find out whether I accept in a single film errors or things that do not correspond exactly to what I wanted it to be. I always thought it was not the single film, it was my whole practice. And so from the very beginning, even though it was only 4 films, so I put together some films to create a small ensemble. Does it exist, ensemble in English? Okay. And slowly it developed like that. And the same thing for the presentation, to do it personally. It's not that I'm really always happy to have to do it myself, the Super A projection, but since it's not a cinema format, I could never give it out of my hands, because it happened that nobody took care of the distance between the projector and the screen, the size, and so on, the framing. So it all came together. It's more work than the filmmaker who has finished the work before he goes out. I have to be present for the show as well. So it's a lot of stress sometimes, but I have to do it with this kind of filmmaking. So with 60mm, it's easier.
Yeah. Well, the films themselves are already so personal in the sense that you feel really a vivid sense of your first-person view on what we're seeing. But on top of that, to then present them this way, it personalizes them way more, and it feels very special.
And sometimes I wished I wouldn't I wouldn't be present so much. Because it's personal, that's true, and that makes me every time.
And I was struck. I think the one that somehow moved me the most almost was the portrait film. And I was wondering, that trio of films was really quite something. And I was wondering if you could say something about those 3 films.
Yeah, the 3 films were not meant to be trilogy, how do you say?
Trilogy.
Trilogy. But it's, as you see, it's always the same person, but in very different moments. And I hesitated a long time to put together as a trilogy, but because it's the most personal film, because it's, as you could see, this was the person I loved best in my life. So, and but it was different moments also of our relationship, you know, and it's very personal what I say, but it belongs to your question. I put them together only after the death of this man I loved. So, and it's strange. At first I felt uncomfortable, but I think it's good like that. It shows it is something which fits together. Although each single film is made in a different way also, yeah, in a different situation and way.
Are there any questions from anybody?
Yes, I mean, it's just, you're an astounding filmmaker. I mean, And the camera work is I mean, it must be instinctive, like those planes seem to be falling down those trees. And the only way we could create that effect is by having the longer lens, telephoto, which will flatten everything and bring the plane closer. And you know, so there was just amazing techniques going on. And the other piece was the tea time. And if that was done in camera, it seemed you were blinking. I mean, there must have been black frames after every shot.
Not in tea time, but in the portrait.
Or portrait. I mean.
Yeah, that was yeah.
And I just couldn't believe the technique that was. You must have stopped at after every shot and put black frames there.
Yeah, create black
create
frames.
that.
Putting the, what is the tab? What do you,
The lens cap.
what do you put on the lens?
The lens cap.
Lens cap, yeah.
Yeah.
I had to put on the lens cap. And
Yes.
to
I mean, it's a fantastic effect. You feel like you're blinking and moving forward rapidly in time, but catching the essence. And yeah, in your timing, I'm just wondering how you must have for 1,000 films. You must have just gotten really good at seeing reality and knowing exactly what pieces you're capturing right as you're going along. It must be an exhausting process, I imagine.
yeah, I might be tired after, because some films, even though each film is very short, it takes a long time to make it in one gesture.
Yeah, yeah.
But when I'm doing, I'm not tired. I like this concentration and this forgetting about the rest of the world and to concentrate totally and to, yeah, it is, sometimes it's even, how can I say that? It's like if I was under drugs.
Right.
You know, I'm in another state of mind.
You're like the
And
heron.
almost blind afterwards also. That is really, but I love that, to forget about me and to be totally in communication through this camera work. And to, it's always at risk, you know, because I can't control, really. I have to go on imagining and daring to make mistakes, and sometimes, you know, I go on filming and it's already over. The cassette is already, because sometimes you don't know it, you know. Sometimes I hear it, and I'm not always checking, so it's a process, and I love this state, the filming itself, I love it.
Yeah.
It is,
With the reflections, you didn't even know that it would begin to rain,
No.
the rain droplets.
yeah, therefore, you know, I called these programs serendipities,
Yes.
because it's really, it's a gift if it happens to me to really feel inspired. I cannot say I want to have this or that. There's no mise en scène. I depend totally on something I do not control. But this is exactly what I love in filmmaking. That corresponds to my personality, I guess, you know. But it can be very exhausting afterwards, but not while I'm filming.
How often, when you're just in your daily life, are you carrying a camera?
So for years, I did it a lot, since it has become so difficult with Super 8, and I do more programs and other work to do. So it is less. It has become less, and above all, I have to be totally free, not to have other things to do or to think about. For example, when I'm staying with a wonderful artist in an Airbnb, and the first morning I went, she showed me her studio and the garden, the courtyard, and there is a wonderful tree with yellow, a little bit orange, yellow flowers, and there was, I don't know, like a cloud of yellow butterflies in another yellow. And I immediately thought, this is what I would like to film, but I couldn't do it this day because I was not free on my mind and I had an appointment? No, yeah, rendezvous. Yeah. So, and today I tried it, and I can tell you there was no cloud of yellow butterflies. I had a camera. I brought 2 cameras because now, since they break all the time, I bring 2, and the 2 of them didn't work at times. So it's something. It's so difficult, but it's a part of my work, you know. So I sat there for quite a time, and I couldn't do what I wanted to do, but I enjoyed still observing. And so I did a film already. I tried hard. I started with the one of the cameras that sometimes filmed. The other one gave up. So it didn't mind. I didn't mind. It was a good situation. I still smell. It was so intense, my observation, and it is what happens when I film too. And sometimes I made mistakes. I thought I had charged the camera. I had a cassette in it, and I did a long film. The film was not long, but the time it took. And afterwards, I found out there was no cassette in it. And I can tell you, sure, I was disappointed, but I made the film. I never forget those that do not exist. So I love to film, I wanted to say. I love this more than to make programs or to present.
Other questions?
This is sort of like similar to what you were just saying, but I'm really curious about your planning process. Like when you choose a place to film, or when you do you ever like choose the feel of the rhythm of it? Because I know in some of those films, like in the Fontaine Medici's, that one had a very it had like a refrain. You kept on returning to that shot of the broad scene, and it felt so premeditated. Whereas other ones felt very in the moment in other ways. I don't know. I'm just curious to know how you're playing.
Yeah, that's a good example. So this fountain is quite amazing. It's a place which I like very much, and it's true. There, it's there. But when I filmed there, to start to make a film, there must be conditions. So it was very important that there was this play of shadow and light. Mm-hmm. And then I cannot tell you, but when I start, I don't know how I go on. I get into it, like in trance. So, and I knew that it's so difficult to really to film that is perspective. How do you say perspective? And it's so strong. And I did want to make it alive, and very often I do that you have something in toto or more or less in toto, and then you have the details. I like to decompose and to recompose, but while I'm doing it, I'm not losing the object, the subject matter, So, but when there is something happening where I cannot make decisions, because not the same kind of decision, because there is something happening, like with the girls. If I would have thought about a day, I never could see this again. So I had to dare to react quickly, but yet to find out what I was really interested. And this is it's always immediate. I don't have the time to reflect a long time, because if I reflect too long, it's gone.
It's almost like performance. It's like what you're doing is, in some of those, is like performance itself. You
mean in the filming?
Yeah, well, the way that you're just reacting, it's like all instinct. It's
instinct, maybe. Yeah, but it's really there are many things. It's really about how do I time, how do I shape time, how do I frame? How do I change distances? You know, it's really, there is a lot of reflection too, but it's not in the cold or in a distant. I don't have the time to. It must come. I must react, and therefore. It depends, but very often, if I don't start immediately, what I'm really interested in is gone. Yeah. So, but there are differences, you know, because, and for some of the situations where I know I can go back, I sometimes try to make more films from the same place or event, but it's true. It's never the same. I'm not the same. The things that are going on are not the same. The light, etc. So, but I do. For example, the first film in the black and white part about the Mona Lisa in the Louvre. It was such a horror to see that nobody can see this painting any longer. And since I have lived for a long time in Paris, so I went back, but not always, because I was so depressed also. But over the years, because there were times where this painting did not have its definite place like it has now. So it has changed. It had different locations within the Louvre, and over the years you could see the change of the medium as well. You know, the old-fashioned camcorders, and my last film of this kind of series is when they take pictures and film with tablets, so you don't see anything any longer. Yeah. So I do series sometimes, but I rarely show them together. So, and for this perspective to see the landing of the airplanes, and my way of condensating that shows what happens, you know. And so I did 2 films there, but in themselves they are not the same. And so. But mostly I have really to be very aware and very precise at the moment itself. Otherwise, I couldn't do my filmmaking like I do it.
Anybody else?
I have a question about the translation to 16 millimeter. And you indicated that was by necessity, that it was a technical necessity. But it seemed to me that it quadruples the pleasure of the image. And I wondered if it quadruples the pleasure of the image. If you ever shoot directly in 16, or if you actually would have preferred to keep those in Super 8.
So, I would have preferred to have a print in Super 8, I have to tell. But I have learned now to, and I liked the way you said it. It's a translation. It's not the same. And it took me a while to accept this, because the Super 8, even though it doesn't have the same brightness, and you can see much more in the 16 millimeter, but Super 8 has its own quality and character, and it corresponds to how I'm doing my work. You know, it's really. Therefore, I was not so happy about this solution, but now I found out it's good to have the 2 of them. And above all, it allows me to show my work still as film, and not to switch to digital, which seems much easier. But so therefore, and therefore, I like to combine now when it's possible the 2 of them. Super 8 as a smaller and the original format, and then the translation. I have to say, when it was already over, you know, it came to me as I discovered by chance that I liked to work with Super 8. But that was already when it, because it was the format par excellence for the amateur and the family films. And people had already the video cameras then. It was before the digital area. So it was already a dying medium when 16 and 35 did seem to survive. But now we have the problem for all film as film, which I really regret a lot, and I think it's unjust, you know, to consider something as old-fashioned or not so good, only because industry has invented new strategies. And nobody would say a painter who's painting still with color, or somebody who's drawing with a pen, he doesn't have the right, because now he has to work on a digital medium, you know. But with film, it exists. It's like that, you know. And so it's getting really difficult. But I was used to sense all the time this danger. But it's getting worse. I have to say, I have overcome so many shocks now. I'm still alive, but it's getting it's getting worse. And
these Super 8 were prints that we watched, or the
yeah,
original?
all Super 8 you saw were prints.
Prints. Oh, they were good.
They used to be good, yeah. Therefore, it's a shame that I cannot have them any longer.
You're aware that Kodak is producing a new Super 8 camera.
I know, but it still doesn't exist, and it's a combination between digital and film.
Yeah, it's a mix.
It's a strange object. I study the photographs all the time, and I might try it.
It's also something that, from what I understand, their marketing department came up with without actually consulting with the motion picture film department. And so now they're having to reconcile these things. So, yeah, in the back.
Have you ever projected with sound?
No, my films are silent. They don't need sound, because I think it's a visual music. You know, there is so much rhythm about, and every motif has its own rhythm, or I give my rhythmic form to what I film. And it wouldn't make sense, and with Super 8 anyway, you know. And I think I love the silent, but I love also to have the sound of the projector. This one didn't sound nice either.
Sorry.
No, but no, it's each projector has its own music, and sometimes it's not so. It's dangerous, and sometimes I love it when it's smooth, you know.
And this one has a lot of personality.
It has a personality. Yeah. Now I'm used to so many different musics, but I mean, because my film is not about illusion, right? It's really, I like that you can be aware of the medium, so not to hide it. Yeah? So therefore music really not. There's one Italian composer, when he saw one of my airplane films, he was so motivated to compose something, but that, in his opinion, it was meant for a loop. But with film, I did not make yet a loop, you know. So we tried once with the digitization. I tried it once, and this was very interesting. But it was not film, you know. It was not normal film. So, but this was interesting, and I could imagine installations for certain work, but not for my films. That would be very special.
And how did you discover film as a medium?
By chance.
By chance, really?
When I studied, I was already an accomplished person, and was not a young student. I was almost 40 years old, and a friend of mine, or rather a friend of my former boyfriend, who had finished art school, and in order to make a bit of money, he offered a Super 8 workshop named Super 8 as Artistic Medium. And he asked me whether I wanted to participate, and I was really very astonished because I never had a camera in hand. I was not very cinephile. I even not so much into photography either. I was always thinking, I had studied literature, and I loved above all poetry, word poetry. So, but I did it for him, so that he could make a little money with my help. And this was the beginning of a new life. Not immediately, but when the workshop didn't last a long time. So I was in the group, maybe the most naive one. The others were they already knew about experimental filmmaking, avant-garde filmmaking. They were eager to, with the help of the workshop, to have something to apply for the art school. So I was the only one naive, in the sense that I didn't know how to handle film also. And but since it was Super 8, and I started, and it took a while. Then the workshop was over, but I went on filming. And when there was the very first film where I really felt my heart making this, I thought there is something I would have liked to do in language, which I never could in this way. And I thought it was something, and my former boyfriend, who was an artist too, he said so too, that it was really something. And it's true, this small little film, which doesn't last, it's maybe 1.5 minutes or something like that, this opened the door to, and then I made film studies in art school in Frankfurt. There was Kubecker at the time, and this film opened up. So, but the most important thing that was really that it was a revolution in my life, that I discovered an instrument, and I really have the feeling that Super 8 camera is my instrument. Back to your question, I didn't answer all what you asked for. You know, the Bolex, I tried to film with Bolex because it's wonderful, 16mm, but it's to film like I do, it is much too heavy. There is too much technique between me, and so I couldn't film this way. But this way is what I'm really interested in my work. I appreciate very much the work of other filmmakers who work differently, but I couldn't do it with a 16mm Bolex. The only thing I could really do, what happens in Super 8 sometimes as well, that when I film only one reel in one take. So, but not for hours to handle all the time. You know, it didn't work. I couldn't create the same strong relationship to what I'm filming.
Any other questions? Well, I really hope all of you, or at least some of you, can come on Sunday to the Egyptian, 7:30, for a completely different program. And please join me in thanking and welcoming again